may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88, 85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in the scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits. And remember when he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him. Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's giving? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluations so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
The Bears! Welcome everyone to a fresh edition of GTF Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. Quick programming notes. At 3 p.m., Mike North and I will be here to get into another argument about Mitch Trubisky or whatever he wants to discuss. I'll probably disagree and we'll have some fireworks. And then the rest of the week contains programming every day about the Chicago Bears. On Friday, we've got an NHL team. Listen, the best way to stay on top of what we're doing here in the bar room is to subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll get alerts on your devices. And that is it for me with that junk. Let me welcome in Greg Gabriel, the man of the day, the hour, the week. How are you, my friend?
I don't know about that. You know what? I'd love to do a show with North.
Oh, good. Yes. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And you know what? The guy's a talker. You're gonna.
Oh, I know. I've listened to him.
All right, let's
set
when
he
that
was
up.
on the radio. He was big on the radio when I first came here 23 years ago.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He was, his claim to fame when he first started at the Score Sports Radios, he got into an argument with not George McCaskey, but his brother when he was the chairman. And Mike started saying things like, you don't know anything about football. You're from the Lucky Sperm Club. And McCaskey, I don't know if he hung up on him, but no longer, he would not go on the Score Sports Radio. But that was Mike's claim to fame because he was the voice of the fan that was just upset with Bears management. So having the two of you the voice of reason, and Mike, the raging mouth of sportscasting, that would be phenomenal. We'll work it out.
You just brought up something that kind of strikes a note with me. And that's the McCaskey. George, when I came here, Michael was the chairman, and Michael was very rarely there. George was downstairs running the ticket office, but I knew George very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And what I figured was, okay, George run the ticket office, and if I need extra tickets, the best way to get them is be real good friends with George.
That's right.
Okay, I mean, you put one and one together, you get two. So, and he's a McCaskey, so you treat him with the utmost respect. He's all those kids got part ownership. It's not like Virginia owns 80% of the team. So, and I used to play golf with Mike. We used to, out at Bourbonnais, we'd on Sundays, Bobby DePaul and Mike and I would play golf. But we probably played 6-7 times together for little rages. But one was funny because this was after we went to the Super Bowl. So this was a training camp in 2007. Now, this is a funny story that just hit me right now. So the coaches and the players and Jerry Angelo got one size ring. Everybody else got a little bit smaller.
Oh, my
Pretty
goodness.
much the same thing, but, not quite on the same scale. So, and, that's the first time that I know of that scouts and front office didn't get the regular rings they're supposed to. So, so anyway, we're teeing it up and we're on the first hole. Just getting ready to tee up on the first hole. And Mike goes, well, what are we playing for today? And Bobby looks at him and he goes, I'll tell you what we're playing for. We're playing for the big fucking ring.
Bam. Love it. That's the way to start a golf match. What was it? Can you recall?
It was hilarious. And the look on Michael's face was like.
Well, and George worked at Channel 2 when I was there. I think he was interning or just working as a news writer in the newsroom. And I never had the opportunity to talk to him, but he seemed like a really pleasant guy. The same guy that we see now out in the parking lot talking to fans and in the stands, super nice guy.
Yes, I take exception. People take a lot of shots at him.
Mm-hmm.
And I know him well. I've known him now for 23 years. We have friendly conversations. We had one at training camp this year for about 20, 25 minutes. Real nice conversation. George knows what he doesn't know. And that's the best thing about him. I mean, he doesn't pretend to know. Well, he takes a lot of, in my opinion anyway, unfair shots from fans. And there was one, and I'm not going to mention the name, but there's a guy, and this was a week ago, and he takes a shot at George, and I in fact, I go, you don't even know the guy. I said, I worked with him for 10 years, and I've known him for over 20. I know him well, blah, blah. So he makes a wise ass remark. Now, this guy writes for one of the blogs. And yesterday, after the game, he puts out a post. It says something like, well, if you know him so well, why don't you call him up and tell him he should be firing the coach tomorrow? I just blocked him. I gave him the finger and blocked him.
Good for you.
I mean, he shouldn't even be writing for a blog with an asshole type responses like that.
Yeah.
He owns the freaking team. He's the chairman of the board. He deserves respect. Yeah, I get why the fans are pissed. Mm-hmm. They deserve to be pissed. They should be pissed. But he's the wrong guy to be pissed at.
Yeah.
He's not the decision maker. Yes, he has to say yay or nay. But he, having worked there and been in the building and know how things work, generally speaking, you just tell them what you want to do and they give it their blessing.
Mm-hmm. That has been that way for a long time. And I sometimes, I've been on this campaign the last month or so that we need to fire the head coach. And boy, I feel guilty every time I post something like that because it's the guy's livelihood. He's got a family and so forth.
But it comes with the territory. And I've said this before. I'm sensitive to that. I don't like to say it only because I've been in the building when they've been after people, meaning the fans and the media, and it just leaves or lends itself to a very uncomfortable feeling in the building. Mm-hmm. And so I'd rather not say things, but this has gotten to a point, and I'm very sincere when I say this. Flus might be the nicest guy in the world. I don't know him. Okay, people speak highly of him as a person. He probably is a great guy. He had a great reputation as a defensive coach. In the last couple of weeks, I kind of question that. But he's not getting the job done. Now, people say, well, they're not going to fire a guy in season. They just don't do that. It's tradition and all that. Well, there's more to it than that. First of all, and we've talked about this, if you don't have somebody on staff that you can elevate to be an interim head coach, then you're just peeing in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Because you still got to try. You got to try to get something out of the players. You don't want the players to just call it a day, put up the white flag and tank it. Well, I think there's 2 on this staff. I thought there was 3, but right now, Hightower's let us down 2 weeks in a row, and you can give him a pass for last week, but then when the field goal gets blocked this week, it's like, what the hell were you doing in practice? They had the exact same thing happen. So, we talked about it with Patrick Manley last week. So, and then there was some other follow-ups on special teams. There were some longer returns that they hadn't been given up. Then you had the ball hit Carter in the leg, gives the ball back to Minnesota. Just too many screw-ups for my liking. But that being said, Eric Washington is, when you listen to him, and I know Eric, I worked with him for 3 years here before. Good man. He's been a coordinator in the league. He can handle a room. He demands respect. You've heard him talk. He comes, he's straightforward. And then there's Thomas Brown. And I think Thomas Brown's way up here. And I've heard other people say it. Pat said it last week, that McVay used to rely on him because of the way, the respect that Thomas Brown had from the coaches. So I look at it this way, and people could say I'm nuts, but when you change a coach at the end of the year, generally that means there could be a partial strip down of your roster because new guy comes in, new schemes, who's going to fit, who isn't going to fit. So you're going through, not always the case, but sometimes you're going through a semi-rebuild. Okay, this team has only won 4 games. What are they, 4-7 or something like that? But we all know they're better than that. This team very easily could be 7-4 if it wasn't for some coaching errors. So my thinking on this, especially with Thomas Brown, is make him the damn interim head coach and see if he's got it. If he doesn't have it, so what? Have you lost anything?
Right. You're not going to get the playoffs. You're just not going to make it with 3 teams in the division in front of you and other teams in other divisions with good second place type records. So the fact of the matter is that all of the Bears players on offense are complimenting Thomas Brown for his communication skills. What Caleb said after the game about Thomas Brown was so impressive. He was asked, why do you think you're playing better? And Caleb used the word aura. He says, I don't know if that's the best word, but he's got an aura about him. And when he talks to me into the headsets and so forth, he was just so complimentary that it's really been a turn on. And when Thursday's press conference with Thomas Brown, he just says the right things. He's got that kind of Chicago, we're going to kick ass attitude that this team has missed in a head coach for some time. I don't recall, maybe John Fox was that way a little bit, but I think you will agree with this, Greg, that John Fox was a little bit past his prime when he accepted the Bears.
And John's a friend of mine, and he'd probably punch me if he heard me say it. I think John took this job as a retirement check. He had health issues.
Yeah,
because I knew John. I met John Fox. He was a defensive back coach at the University of Pittsburgh. That's how far back it goes. And then he worked his way up through the ranks in the NFL as a defensive back coach and a coordinator. We had him as a coordinator in New York for 4 years. Mm-hmm. We had a stat. Jim Fossil was the head coach. Sean Payton was the offensive coordinator, and Fox was the defensive coordinator. We went to a freaking Super Bowl. We didn't win, but we got to a Super Bowl with that group.
Yeah. And I really wish fans would pay more tribute to that because it's not easy winning an NFC conference championship. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. So now here's one thing you tweeted out last night, or might have been this morning, and to me it was DJ Moore taking a little bit of a shot at Waldron, reading between the lines. Okay, Bears wide receiver DJ Moore on Caleb Williams. His confidence is through the roof. He's understanding the game. His understanding of the game plans through and through. To see him go out there and just be able to play quarterback like he wants to, it's amazing to see. To me, now the guy who was not saying things like that was DJ Moore 2 weeks ago.
Yep. Very, very true. Greg, as we've been talking about McCaskey, some people had some questions or comments I want to share with you.
Okay.
Let's start with Let's start with AW. The offense under Walden looked like Mike Martz. The new OC seems more West Coast. Does this make sense? Obviously, this isn't about McCaskey, but anyway, Bears should find a way to keep this new OC around. Do you agree that the offense under Walden looked like Mike Martz's? I personally didn't get that. Did you?
It's the exact same playbook.
Really?
Yeah. How are you going to change the playbook?
Yeah.
Okay, let's look where they came from. Where'd they both come from? L.A. Yeah, Waldron went from L.A. to Seattle as the offensive coordinator.
Right.
The two of them worked together in L.A. This is McVay's offense. It's McVay Shanahan offense. It's how you use and implement the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Thomas has changed the play calling. He might have made some changes in some plays. But it's, the terminology, everything is pretty much the same. You put your own little tweaks in it.
Yeah.
So, and we said this before. Luke Getsy is pretty much the same scheme too. Okay, but it's how you use that scheme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Now, I think he said I lost the chat, but he was comparing Waldron's offense to Mike Martz, the former Ram.
I just didn't like the way Waldron called plays.
Yeah.
And there was nothing quick.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't necessarily playing to the strengths of Caleb. So last week, what happens? The first thing they do, they go, well, Caleb doesn't like to run, or at least that's what they thought. So, we're going to put in these RPOs. So Caleb's going to have the chance to hand off, pass, or run. And he chose to run a bunch of times and got a lot of yardage. Really, the first time we saw it all year. Remember I said last week, I said, that isn't going to work very much longer. Now you saw it on tape.
Yeah.
It happened one time yesterday.
Yeah.
Repeat, but see, now Waldron probably would have tried it 8 times yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And same with Luke Getsy. It worked once, so we might as well do it more.
Exactly. All right, let's go to Scottish Barry. He says the results count. Georgia's record has been piss poor. Something is far wrong with evaluation with ownership. You can't argue that under George McCaskey, the overall win-loss record has been less than mediocre. And so is George relying on the wrong people for evaluation of GMs and coaches and stuff? The ownership of that record starts with the chairman of the team, no?
Well, okay, I got the answer. And it might be a long answer, but I can walk you through how this happens.
Excellent.
The league knows that many owners, and I don't want to say are clueless, but they don't know who the hell to hire. So they have got a group of former general managers to basically help in the process for some of these teams as Now, part of it has to do with, how much work that consultant puts into it. The consultant's making a lot of money to do this. And how much work is he going to put into it? That's part of it. But you go back and, okay, they fire Jerry, our crew, and Ted Phillips does the hiring. And Ted, it got down to, I think, like Emery, Ballard, and somebody else. And Ted didn't want somebody like connected with Jerry that would do things like Jerry did.
Okay.
That's on Ted. Okay. Now, Emery worked for us. He was one of my scouts. He was my Southeast scout. And in fairness, he was a good scout. Good scout doesn't mean you're going to make a good general manager. Phil's very smart, and one of his problems is he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. and he's not. So, but what Ted wanted was, well, he went to work at Atlanta, so he worked for guys who came from New England, and it's that vaunted New England system. That is such bullshit, such fantasy. All the New England system is a grading system. And that system came from the New York Giants. When I was with the New York Giants, I brought that system here. We got rid of it after the first season. We used it the first season. We all got together, the scouts, Jerry and I, after we had this is like the day after the draft was done. And we spent like all day hashing it out and saying what we thought was good about it. We gave it basically an open room to the scouts. Say what you think. And we thought that really the system had limitations. It was good in its time, but there was ways we could implement a better system and get the type of players that we wanted, because the way the grading worked, you had a letter grade in that system, and there was only a certain number you could put on certain letters, and that would drop a guy down lower on the board when he deserved to be higher. Does that make sense?
Sure does.
Okay, so we did away with it. But that's the same system New England's using. Belichick took it because it worked so well in New York. But Ted doesn't know this. And Ted didn't know that I had that system my first year. Jerry, it was funny because Jerry leaves New York. He goes to Tampa Bay as director of player personnel. And he developed his own system there. And so when he hired me, and it was really the day after he got hired, and I knew I was getting the job beforehand. If he had gotten the job, I knew I was coming. So, I go, Jerry, you want me to learn your system, which I don't know, and then you want me to teach your system, which I've never worked with. So why don't we use the system I've worked with for the last 17, 18 years, and you've worked with for a number of years, and give that to the scouts? And he said, that's a good idea.
Okay, yeah.
So, and then we ditched it after a year and made up our own system. And I thought the system that we used was very simple, but all it gets down to is ranking the players correctly. I don't care what the system is. It all gets down to ranking the players the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And so hiring Phil because he knew that system was wrong on Ted's part, because Ted was the big decision maker. And but now you got to give credit to Ted because he saw the error in his ways. And so when he had to run Phil out of town after, was it just 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, 3 years. Phil was with Lovey 1 year. And see, he told Lovey that he had to keep Lovey at least 1 year, and then he could hire a coach. And Lovey goes 10-6, and Phil's like, I'm going to hire my own coach anyway. Yeah, you're the smartest guy in the room, Ted.
And then he hires Trestman over Arians, who went on to win a Super Bowl.
Well, he hires another brainy guy who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. And I've met Trestman. He was working in the XFL when I was there. He's not a bad guy. Stranger than shit now. But, as a person, he's a good person. I wouldn't call him a good football coach, but he's a good person.
All right, another question for you on that topic of
I got to finish it.
Please, I'm sorry.
Now when they told you it was going to be a long story here now. So now when they fire Emery, Ted's like, I don't trust myself to make the right decision. And he knew it was an important decision. So that's when they go to the league to get the consultant from the league to help with the hiring process. Okay. In that case, they hired Ernie Accorsi. Accorsi picks Pace. Pace picks Pace originally picks John Fox, which really was Ernie Accorsi. I remember I was in Buffalo with my grandkids and it came over the wire like at 3 p.m. in Buffalo time that John Fox and Denver were parting ways because there was a disconnect between Fox and Elway, and it was a mutual thing. Right away, I said, that's the next coach of the Bears. And I called some people because I was doing stuff at the Score. I said, you watch, Fox is going to be the next coach. I think within 3 days, he was the head coach. And because I knew the relationship between Ernie Accorsi and Fox. Mm-hmm. We were all together in New York.
All right. Good stuff, Greg. Let me ask one more question regarding, it's actually kind of more of a complaint. Jeremy says, McCaskey is the reason for this shit culture. He will never hire someone who demands accountability. As a fan, I'm disgusted at someone defending this product on the field. I've been through it for 35 years. That's the voice of most fans who are around my age who have just seen disappointment after disappointment.
Although I get it. But they're none of them have even seen the inside of the building, let alone worked in there. Okay, and they're throwing their anger at the wrong person. George is the first guy. In fact, he said it to me in a conversation this summer, and we started talking about Caleb. And I said, "Well, what do you think?" Oh, he looks pretty good to me. And the people liked him. He goes, but you shouldn't be asking me. I don't know anything. This is exactly what he said. He said, what do you think? And I told him, I said, George, I had some reservations. And, like we talked about in the spring, I said, but they've proved to be wrong. And he listened to what I was saying. But just that conversation, mm-hmm. tells you exactly where George is coming from. And that's why I'm going to stick up for him, because I know the man. I know that he knows his limitations. And so for people, I'm sorry, I'm just going to, I'm going to fight back if people want to take shots at him, because I just don't think it's fair. And I think I'm in position to say that better than 5 million fans around here that want to piss and moan. Mm-hmm. Because I've been in the building and worked with the man.
Mm-hmm. Samo asks, do scouts or general managers request a player development plan from the coaches prior to the draft? It just seems like it would help a GM to know and understand what coaches think they can do with a player.
Yeah, that's all part of the process. That's your final meetings leading up. You put your final board together. I can't tell you what Ryan Poles does because I haven't been in the room with Ryan Poles. Mm-hmm. But everybody does basically the same type of thing. Might be a little different. What we used to do is we had to put into the computer, into the notes on the player that stuck with it. If we take this guy, what is the plan? How are we going to use him? What's the development plan for year 1, year 2, year 3? And so when if something goes wrong, and part of it is, well, you said when we drafted him that, you didn't expect him to play as a rookie. Now, so you're holding the coach accountable for some things. You're also holding the scouts accountable because, you got to follow the plan. No, yeah, sometimes the player can be a lot better than what you anticipated, or what you have just wasn't good and you had to play that player sooner than anticipated. But if that's what the guy who asked the question wanted to know, that, yeah, that happens. There is a developmental plan for each player like we had. And I'm sure Ryan does the same thing, because you got to. It only makes sense. You're not just, and it also goes back, I've said it 1,000 times. You've got a player profile for each position. This is what we're looking for at guard. This is what we're looking for at tackle. This is what we're looking for an X wide receiver. This is what we want on the slot. It's all written up. So when you're out doing the scouting and you're writing your summation on the player, you can say, in our system, this guy's an X wide receiver because yada, yada, yada.
Makes sense. Good approach. All right, let's see if I've got one saved here that I want to share right now. Marty just asked, what do you think about the Mara family and the Giants? You think about clueless and gullible. They might be the epitome of that. The Giants situation is pretty rough right now. Your thoughts?
First of all, I think the world of the Maras. And it's not Mara, it's Mara.
Sorry.
And Chris, who doesn't get involved much in scouting, was a regular scout, just like the rest of us. In fact, because you mentioned the first thing I thought of when you said Mike North said to Mike McCaskey, "You're a member of the Lucky Sperm Club." Well, yeah. Chris Mara used to call it the Lucky Sperm Country Club, and he'd say, "I know I'm a member of the Lucky Sperm Country Club."
That's great.
So, and he goes, and I appreciate it. But he was one of us, and really everybody in the Mara family is like that. Wellington Mara, you would never know, was a multi-billionaire. He drove what was the big Ford back in that days? The big Ford four-door sedan. That was his car. He didn't have a Mercedes. He didn't have a BMW. He didn't have a Cadillac. He had a frickin' Ford. And the license plate was 1N7, meaning 1 and 7. And that was like the record of the Giants the first year he could remember when he was a little kid. But he was a very down-to-earth guy. All the Maras are. Have they made bad decisions? Yeah. Part of it I put on Ernie, because now when I was there, George Young was the general manager for all but the last 4 years. Then Ernie was the GM the last 4 years, maybe 4.5 years. And then, they kept trying to do it the Giant way instead of making changes, because the game changes and the way to do things change. And they made some mistakes. Now, Jerry Reese was a good guy. He's a capable guy. Came in with us. In fact, I spent a year training Jerry Reese, and he's a good friend. And Jerry took him to 2 Super Bowls. But then he just the wheels fell off. And after that, they replaced him with Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman is a good guy. He's not a general manager. He was a director of pro scouting, and he was a good director of pro scouting. Some guys, it's like, you got to know how far a guy can go and what he is. Some guys are good scouts, but they're not going to be good personnel directors. Some personnel directors aren't going to make good GMs because of the decision-making process. And Dave, from what I got a lot of friends in the front office still at Giant Stadium or MetLife Stadium now. And you hear things, Dave treated people like shit. And, which is surprising because he's really a good guy. But hey, so yeah, are they doing some things wrong now? Yeah, I don't think you'll get an argument from anybody in the league when they hired Joe Shane to be the GM. Joe was the assistant GM at Buffalo. Did a good job there. He's highly respected around the league. Then, but they made some bad decisions. Now, they didn't draft Daniel Jones. They inherited Daniel Jones. Jones was drafted by Gettleman. So part of the problem is they inherited the bad quarterback. The problem they made is that is their fault is they gave him that huge extension.
Yep, that was under present administration or what is. Well,
and I think I thought Brian Daboll was going to be a good coach, but he was a great offensive coordinator in Buffalo. He developed the Bills quarterback, Josh Allen.
Right. Do you think that Brian Daboll, if he's available and the Bears are looking for a new offensive coordinator in 2025, do you think Brian Daboll is someone you bring into the building and interview?
Fuck yeah.
That's
Why not?
Well,
look at the job he did with Josh Allen as a coordinator.
I just wonder, Josh Allen could maybe any offensive coordinator in the NFL.
Minute, Aldo, go back and look at Josh Allen's first 2 years in the league.
Okay, yeah.
He was a 52 or 53% completion guy his rookie year and threw a ton of interceptions. Went up to 58 or 59% the second year. Still threw a ton of interceptions. It was his third year that he took off. He jumped from 58 or 59%. He jumped 10 points, which was like unheard of that you see a guy jump that much from 1 year to the next. And he just, everything just came together. What Josh was, we used to say he's a big chunk of clay that you had to mold. And that's what he was. He had the talent. But, he played at a junior college and he plays at Wyoming. So he didn't play at the highest level of comp. He had the arm, the athleticism, he had all that, but he had to learn how to play quarterback.
Yeah.
And Daboll did that. You can't take that away from the guy. He's the guy that developed the guy. And if you go ask Josh Allen, he's the guy I'll tell you.
Interesting. Bellissimo says Josh Allen came from Wyoming, not exactly an NFL offense. He was an athlete with a cannon coming up, but he learned to be an NFL quarterback.
That's right. He's 100% correct.
I'm told that Matt Eberflus has taken the podium. Unlike last week, we are not going to go live to him. I heard him on ESPN 1000 this morning. He had nothing new to say from what he said yesterday.
I refuse to listen anymore.
Well, I do want to play one thing for you, Greg, because in yesterday's game, there was a confusion on a fourth down and foreplay. So let's listen to Eberflus's explanation for what happened. And just in case people don't know, the field goal team ran out while the Bears decided to play for it. So there was confusion, and Caleb unfortunately had about 15 seconds, and he heard the play wrong coming in from Thomas Brown because of all the confusion. Right. I'm just going to play a little bit of Eberflus working his way through an explanation.
The confusion that existed in that sequence with the QB team coming on.
Yeah. We felt good about going for it there. We really did. And that was a green light for us. And I got to do a better job communicating to the field goal team.
Was there some rush in the play? Did you see that Caleb was kind of rushing the play? It looked like he was still trying to get things settled as the.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's just a point where we need to do a better job. I have to do a better job of communicating everything to everybody. And if he was late, then I might have been late. And then he was maybe late getting the call. So, and again, we liked the call there, and we were all set with going for it.
That guy pisses me off now.
You know what? No, it gets down there. You go. I was like, you know how we talk about like with Justin and with Mitch Trubisky, they're slow processing.
Mm-hmm.
Flus is a slow processor.
It appears that way, yes.
Okay, you're supposed to have before third down even started.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if we don't do anything in this play, we're going for it or we're kicking the field goal. So everybody's ready before the third down play even begin or the second down play even begins.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta be a step ahead, not a step behind.
Yep, and this is what happened here. It's after this play. It's 3rd down and 9 on this play. The pass is completed to Keenan Allen, so it's a 4th down and 4. Caleb is looking to the sideline. He's told we're going to go for it. There's 35 seconds on the play clock. Eberflus is at that point noticing that Cairo is on the field. He's like way in the middle of the field.
Yeah, it was a clusterfuck.
Yeah, and then there's a shot of Richard Hightower coming in here, who has let us down the last 2 weeks. What are your thoughts on Hightower? Because
that's what I said earlier. I said I thought there was 3 guys that you had on the staff that you could elevate to an interim head coach.
Right.
But after the last 2 weeks, you almost got to eliminate Hightower.
Yeah, unfortunately. I feel bad for the guy because he showed promise, but there's no way.
I like that. See that reaction he made? I like that.
I love that reaction from Brown. He shows like he cares and he's a fighter. It's fantastic.
It's emotion.
Yeah. And we have to talk about Caleb Williams. He had such an incredible day. This pass to the Andre Swift is something that you just don't see every day in professional or college football. Him rushing away from a defender who was unblocked and him throwing it in the bucket while he is running at full speed towards the sideline.
Part of it too is you gotta give some praise to Swift because that's the scramble drill. And Swift breaks off his route and just takes off to an open area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So that's what happens. So Swift takes off downfield. Caleb sees him. See there? Now watch. Well, he's scrambling. I got to go this way.
Yep. And he actually looked to see where the safety is just to make sure. I'm not going to get real bad here. But here's the other.
I got to say one thing before, so I don't forget. The officials freaking sucked.
Oh my gosh! Thank you for bringing it up. Take it away.
First of all, the first bad call was, I mean, there were several. The one was the no interference call against Rome in the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
That was like one of the most blatant interference things I ever saw. Yes, the defensive back had his head turned. He also backed his body right into.
Right.
Turning your head is one thing. Backing your body into him to prevent the receiver to try to come back to the ball is interference.
Plain as sight, yes. And, they made a number of bad calls, and they made some bad calls that were in favor of the Bears or sometimes non-calls. I just think from head to toe, left to right, that's an awful crew. And I listened to ESPN 1000 for a day. I think it was on Friday last week. And Jerko cautioned us. This crew is one of the worst. So be prepared for anything. And he was right about that. Greg, the other pass that I wanted to share with you, because he made 4 huge plays. I'll just share one more. This is that pass to Keenan Allen, and the window to Allen had to be about the size of my hand, and that is it. This is it right here. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong throw. This one. Unbelievable. Play action. Steps into the pocket and fires. I thought it was going to be intercepted.
When it was first thrown, I thought it was intercepted.
That's what I thought. Yes, it's just beautiful. And somebody in the chat said that Keenan can't catch the ball anymore. He can catch it. He's just been more inconsistent than I've ever seen him in his career. Yeah,
very. I mean, he's going to be one and done for this team. You can't. He's out of contract, and for the way he's played. If he had played every game like yesterday, and he had some drops yesterday, that, then you could consider bringing him back. But I don't. regardless of who's coaching the team. I just don't think you can bring it back, which makes me want to go back, because you go to, if they make a coaching change, in my opinion, whether they make Brown an interim coach to see if he's got the wherewithal to be a head coach, or you go out and get somebody, Ben Johnson or whoever. You want, at least on the defensive side, to hire somebody that plays a similar style scheme. Otherwise, you're going to be changing most of the defensive players.
Yeah.
And that sets you back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do believe, let's just assume that whoever they hired, say, would keep Eric Washington and make him the coordinator. And Eric, how he ran a similar defense before, and when he was in Buffalo, he wasn't the coordinator, but they ran a very similar scheme, which was really McDermott's scheme. The difference was they used some bigger, except for Oliver, they used some bigger people inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that in the profile here, you just need, Big Bill is a good guy. He's short, but he's a big, wide body, and he's athletic. You need another big, athletic guy to help occupy the front, and not that you play them together, that you can rotate. So when you take one out, you're bringing the same type of player in, to go with your three technique guy.
Yeah. D. Starren says one of the best things I like about Caleb is ball security. He's only had 5 interceptions this year. And Greg,
he hasn't had any in 5 games. I saw that this morning. Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, let me see. I think I put something up here in one of our banners.
He had 2 in 1 game. And going back.
Caleb is the first Bears rookie quarterback to go 5 consecutive starts without an interception since at least 1950. That, according to Brad Gibbs. Me too. And Caleb also 51. Passed Mitch Trubisky for the most passing yards as a Bear in Bears rookie history. He's already 200 yards, almost 200 yards past Mitch Trubisky. He had just a great game yesterday. Yes, there was a lull in production in late second quarter, third quarter, but again, when the chips are down and it's fourth quarter, he comes through. He's a rookie. He's a rookie, but he's showing he's a good prospect.
He made when they got in position to tie the game. That throw he made to DJ.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Rocket ball.
that thing would have torn the skin off my hands. He threw it so hard. It was unbelievable. Couple of thoughts I want to share with you here. Marty has an interesting comparison. He says that Flus has reached Nathaniel Hackett level with Denver, with all the mass confusion that it's on the sidelines. He looks overwhelmed. And that leads me to this question, Greg. In all of your years of seeing coaches, working alongside coaching staffs and stuff, have you ever seen a coaching staff that has promise, that has knowledge, all of a sudden start to crumble because of pressure, meaning that they're worse now than they were a year ago or a few weeks ago or whenever?
We don't know what goes on behind the scenes.
Right.
And we're never going to know. My gut feeling is there's a second guessing going on there with some of the coaches. Now, I don't know that. I'm guessing that.
Okay.
Is
your guess like coach to coach second guessing, or could it be Poles or maybe even Warren coming in and meddling?
No, I don't think if it's Warren, he's totally out of line. Like he's never even played the game, let alone coach it. And I don't think it's Ryan. You could have coaches just second guess calls that Flus is making. He's calling the defense, and go back to that what was it, like 3rd and 18 or 3rd and 16, and Mullins has to come in off the bench and he's cold, and you play a prevent type defense and you rush 4. I mean, it's like I was screaming at the TV. What the fuck is he doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Scottish Bear had asked that question.
That was just like made for pressure.
Mm-hmm. It really, really was.
Make him make a mistake.
Yeah.
Don't give him an opportunity to throw a good ball.
Yeah, and word is that play wasn't even in the playbook, that O'Connell kind of scripted it out on the sideline for Mullins, and that's the first time they ran that play, which is basically just a clear-out play, take everyone deep and have, was it Aaron Jones cross the middle, and they picked up that valuable first down.
Right.
Yeah.
They probably guessed correctly that Flus was going to play it safe. And,
Yep.
Eric Washington is more aggressive. I think Eric would be blitzing. I know the Vikings coordinator, he would have been blitzing the shit out of somebody in a situation like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do it. What the hell was his name? Williams, the defensive coordinator, who was head coach of the Bills, defense coordinator, real aggressive. He goes, put me in a situation like that, I'm always sending pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that they're blitzing less now because of the injuries in the defensive backfield? And there was, Terrell Smith, I thought had a good game, but made 2 or 3 really eye-glaring mistakes during the game. And he's been going back and forth in terms of playing with Tyreek Stevenson, who also made another couple errors.
I think Terrell has got a ton of upside.
Mm-hmm.
He needs play time, and I think they're realizing that, and they're trying to get him the reps because I think they think Stevenson has got talent. He's a knucklehead, and so how reliable is he?
Yeah. Well, I got a question for you. I was watching Fox Sports this morning, and the crew on the show called The Facility, Chase Daniel, Jones, who was a wide receiver with Green Bay, Acho, and LaShawn McCoy. The topic was about tanking. Why should the Cowboys win another game? They should tank so they could get a high. I couldn't believe that I was hearing ex-professional football players even entertaining that idea. Now, I know it's probably the producer said I want you to talk about, but 1 or 2 of those guys was actually endorsing that the Cowboys should not play hard and lose. Have you ever in your life heard players or anyone in any administration talk that way?
I'm going to answer it this way because it's an interesting question. If the players know that the front office doesn't want to win,
mm-hmm.
they're got the attitude that why should I bust my ass?
Mm-hmm.
Might be a subconscious thing. So, yeah, they get involved. But in many cases, and you go back to Flus's first year, but they had, they got rid of a lot of the good players. That was a design tank. And can they admit to it? No. Was that what happened? Yes. And, it's tough to, when the players know the front office doesn't want to win,
mm-hmm.
then it's tough for them to go out. But at the same time, they're pros. They're making a ton of money, and they owe it to themselves and the fans. And it depends, it depends on the situation. You go back to the Bears situation, Flus's first year. Flus wasn't going anywhere. It was the first year, and so he was safe. And so you almost can, I don't want to say condone it, but forgive it. Is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
But let's say this year, now these guys are playing for who's going to be my coach next year, or where am I going to be next year? Can I make any money? So, you can't afford to have shitty tape because that's going to hurt you going, trying to get a deal somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You could end up getting just a minimum deal. Which brings up a point, another one I wanted to bring up.
Please.
I had beef with the analytic geeks.
Oh yeah.
And every guy who played the game was with me. They're saying Flus didn't make a mistake going for 2 with that first touchdown. And I go, are you out of your mind? Of course he made a mistake. He should have kicked and been down by 7. No, that was the right thing to do according to the analytics. Well, who said analytics are 100% correct? Jerry Azuma, Chase Daniel, and about 5 other players all said the same thing. Why did they go for 2? What happens, you go for 2 and you miss, now you're forced to go in for 2 again, and 2 is not a gimme. It's a hard play to make. And where if you go for 1 and now you're down by 7 and you get an opportunity to score again, then you make the decision. And part of it is, in my opinion, you make the decision, how much time is left on the clock. If you got a minute and a half left on the clock where the other team's got a chance to go down and score, well, maybe you go down and maybe you go for 2 there and go for the win. If you got 8 seconds left, I think personally, I think you go for the tie and play in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
But that the decision should be made on the second touchdown, not the first touchdown. When you do it on the first touchdown, now you're forced to go for 2 on the second touchdown. And again, it's no gimme. The percentage you're making it is less than 50%.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to you?
Makes total sense.
Oh no, this is the way. And I just said, I don't give a fuck what some geeky math guy said who's never played the game of football.
Exactly. Well, and it's like, anything in sports, you have to account for the vibe, the momentum, and sometimes throw away the analytics. So you that's the type of game where you don't go for 2 because you want to be in certain places, in certain aspects, just like Patrick Manley said last week, that Eberflus can be aggressive sometimes and then not aggressive other times, especially late in the game. That was not a time to be aggressive and go for 2. I agree with you.
No, there was like 8 minutes left in the game or something like that.
Yeah.
7.5, 8 minutes. There's a lot of time left. You don't know what Minnesota was going to do. You backed yourself up now if you make it, it looks like a great call. But the chances of making it are less than 50-50.
Exactly.
Okay, so where the chance of making the 1-point kicker like 95%.
Right.
So it's you leave yourself in a position where you don't have to put yourself in another less than 50% situation to even tie the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that happens, let's play it out that way. Okay, you get down there, there's 10 seconds left of the game, you just scored. Now it's 24-22, and you need 2 points to just tie the game to go to overtime. And you got like less than 50% chance of making it, and you miss it. So you lose 24-22. Who's going to get yelled at for fucking up the first time? The coach.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Where if he would have kicked the first time and made it, he could have kicked the second time and made it and gone to overtime. Or he could have said, screw it. We've only won 4 times this year. I'm going for the win.
I'm with you 100%, not disagreeing at all. We've got some great questions and comments I want to share with you. Slick says, Greg and Angelo fixed the offensive line in 2 years. How many players does he think it will take for them to fix it with Caleb? How many players? How much time? What are your thoughts?
Well,
thank you, Slick.
We didn't do it in the draft. We did it in free agency,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't have to spend as much money. There was one guy getting money in free agency, and that was John Tate. And Reuben Brown didn't make a lot of money. I mean, they made good money, but they weren't getting like, $20 million a year type money. I mean, it wasn't even comparable. If you use that age versus this age, it wasn't even comparable. But we signed in free agency Garza, Reuben Brown, Fred Miller, and John Tate. And the only drafted player in there was Olin Kreutz, and we didn't draft him. We inherited him. So we lucked out on that. We got players that could, were good fits for the scheme. Guys that were really good players. Reuben, we got at the tail end of his career, but he still gave us a couple real good years. He was a former Pro Bowler, always durable, never missed time. So we got the right guys. But now it's different. I think this offseason you got to draft one high. You can say, well, you got to use your first round pick. Well, where are you picking in the first round? And it's that player versus who and how the players. It's not as simple as just saying I got to take an offensive lineman with the first pick, because you might have a defensive tackle that is rated a lot better. But you better take one with one of your first two picks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you got to get somebody in free agency, but you got to be careful. You can get some good players in free agency that don't cost you $20 million a year. And that's where a good pro scouting department really, really helps. But, I just looked at the who might be available, because there's still a long time. Someone get re-signed or whatever. And there's a few guys that look like they could be interesting, but I haven't, I'm just looking at the names. I haven't done any film work.
Mm-hmm.
That might not cost an arm and a leg. And you want guys that are the right age. You don't want to go out and get a 32-year-old guy.
Right.
So it'll be interesting. But part of the equation too is who's going to be coaching them.
Well,
because you might have come in and have a different offensive philosophy where they want these athletic guys to play the outside zone scheme. And now you come in and you're going to hire a coach and he's going to change the scheme, and he wants more of a power scheme. So, you got to get a bunch of guys like Darnell Wright, bigger, girthier type guys, especially inside.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on Chris Morgan? Do you still think that he's a viable?
I think he's cursed by what he has, and the injuries aren't his. I mean, I have never seen an offensive line lose as many people as this line has lost over the last couple of years. Again, you like Buffalo last year. The same group of linemen started every single game through the regular season and the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key to winning.
Yeah. Laz says, Greg, do you think the Bears are slotting Ricky Stromberg to be the starting center next season? And before you answer that,
on the team.
Yeah, they signed him. I think he's.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
They signed him on the practice squad.
Right.
Before
you answer that, Greg,
I can't answer that because Ricky Stromberg stunk in Washington, who drafted him.
He did, and then he got injured, and
they didn't try to keep him.
Right.
So, there's people that liked him in the draft. I liked him as a mid-round guy. He went in the third, I believe. I thought that was a little high, but it's, what? First of all, who's going to be what offense are they going to be playing? Who's going to be coaching the line? And I don't think you can hand anybody a job. You got to let them compete for a job.
Right. Well, I have an opinion. I know people are going to throw rocks at me, and maybe you will too, but I doubt you will, because I think I have seen such improvement from Coleman Shelton at the center position. I would try to bring him back 1 year, 2 year deal, what have you. I would then focus on the two center positions and ensuring that the tackle. Excuse me, two guard positions, and then maybe looking at a potential starter at tackle. But I think the guard positions are the highest priority, and I think Coleman Shelton has been playing pretty well the last half dozen games. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm with Shelton has played well because he's smart. He got overpowered early in the season when they played some really big defensive lines, interior defensive lines. I'm with Manley on this. Is he good enough to win with? He's good enough to be your backup and get you out of games and start 3, 4, 5 games if you have an injury. I think you want somebody better. We used to have a 64 grade, and the definition of a grade is a good player can start if he has to, but you're always looking to try to replace him.
Yeah. There needs to be a hyper focus by Ryan Poles on fixing this offensive line. That's the most important thing that he can do for the career of Caleb Williams, other than getting him the requisite coaching that he needs. All right, more great comments and questions coming in here. Laz is asking about Torrey Taylor. Why doesn't Torrey Taylor move back 1 yard when he's holding those field goal tips? He's the holder for the field goal kicks. Laz says that would make the ball higher as it crosses the line of scrimmage. I can't believe the edge would break down. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, it used to be that the kicker was 7 yards back, and now they're about 8.
Yeah.
So they're already back 1.
I've noticed that.
And so I don't know if you want to make it. Part of it's timing. You've got what they time. There's different times that you got. One is what they call snap to toe. Means from the very instant the ball is picked up to throw back to getting back to the holder, setting it up, and the kicker kicks the ball. So the time, the whole operation process. And then you're timing the length of the snap. There's all different types and you break the things down too. How fast is the snap? You do it for punts too. How quick does the guy get the ball back? Is he accurate? When you're grading snappers, you're grading on velocity, tightness of the ball, and accuracy. It's like a freaking quarterback.
It is. And it's one of the things that I blame the blacks on, and this isn't breaking news, is the trajectory of Santos' kicks is lower this season. I should say lower over the last few weeks than I've ever seen. And I think, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the kick motion almost like a golf swing? And sometimes when you're playing golf, you can start hitting some liners off the tee that you don't want. You want to get the ball up in the air.
Right. And it's really, he can get the rise on the ball he wants. So it's how he's hitting the ball, how he's approaching the ball and hit it. It's all on him.
I love this question from D. Stan.
Look at the rise on the ball on the extra points.
Yeah, exactly.
And those are 29 yards.
Yeah.
And look at how far they go. So why isn't he doing that from 45, 47?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. That's a great question. Question for Hightower. I'll send this over to the beat reporters. D. Starr says, doesn't the offensive line look like they're standing too tall blocking? I noticed that too. They're getting really high up there. What's the technique for an offensive lineman?
You're looking at knee bend. And Pryor is not a knee bender.
No.
Okay, so he gets tall. He's girthy. He's big. He's strong.
Right.
And that's why he gives ground, because he doesn't have that knee bend. You get that. Your power in your lower body is in your hips and in your ass, but it means nothing if you can't bend your knees.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the very first things you're looking at an offensive lineman is he a knee bender or is he a straight-legged player? I kill straight-legged players. There was that big tackle. He went like the third round last year for the University of Houston.
Oh, come on, Bellissimo. You're in the chat.
I think he's a backup. That son of a bitch couldn't. I mean, his legs were as straight as this bottle. He could not bend his knees, and I will kill guys like that because it's a game of bending. You've got to have, and that's one of the problems I think that Braxton has. And Braxton got, I was as big as Booster, and I'm losing some of it. He got beat by an outside in move for a sack yesterday, which he should never happen for him. And he gets a little too tall.
Yeah.
You got to drop those. There was a guy, remember the player played for Denver. His name was Zimmerman.
Yeah.
That son of a bitch, he'd come out of his stance and he was like half sitting right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he had the greatest knee bend I've ever seen and just kept that the whole play, every play. He was a perfect, go back and watch old tape of that guy. He was so freaking good. And he was like maybe 295, 300 pounds, but you weren't going to move him because he had a lot of power in his lower body and the ability to bend his knees.
Bellissimo saying that you're referring to Chris Paul from Houston, stiff legs and arms.
Yeah, well, I don't remember what his name was, but he was, he just couldn't bend his knees. And like I say, I kill those guys.
I love it.
Kill.
Let's see. Tom Groobs is asking about DeAndre Swift. Do we stick with him next season, or we draft a running back? You're going to stick with Swift.
You're going to stick with him. You're going to draft somebody. Well, you're going to get the kid back from what's his name from Howard.
Oh, yeah,
and the rookie. You're getting him back, assuming he's going to be okay.
Yes,
and you're going to start to know that in the spring. And you're going to keep Roshan, you're going to keep Swift, and you're probably going to draft a guy.
In the third day of the draft. Absolutely.
Day 3. I mean, somebody asked me, did you watch any of the Kansas-Colorado game?
No, I did not.
Okay, there's a running back from Kansas who just, dominated that Colorado game. He had 200 and some odd yards total offense between receptions and rushing.
I saw the highlights too.
He's just at about 1,000 yards rushing for the year. He's about the same size as Khalil Herbert, not as fast. So somebody says to me, got to get him in the 3rd round. I said, no, he's a running back. You're going to get him in the 5th or 6th. And that's a great pick at that point.
Absolutely.
Because he catches the ball really good. Unless the back is really, really special, you take him later.
Right. Devin Neal, according to CJ Williams. Thank you.
He's a
CJ.
good player.
He is. He's a very good player. By the way, do you think
I got a player from Tennessee the other day that I did him for one of the agents I work for. Can't think of his name, but now he died. I gave him a 2nd round grade. And I said, if this was 10 years ago, he might go in the 1st.
Pretty wild. Pepe wants to know about Travis Hunter. Your thoughts on him? The Bears are moving up the draft order. They're going to end up with the top 10 draft pick. Probably not high enough to draft Travis Hunter, although you never know. But what are your thoughts on Travis Hunter? Will he go before any of the quarterbacks? This is, in Pepe's mind, it's a rough quarterback class this year.
I don't know if it's as rough as people. Quarterbacks get moved up. How many quarterbacks went in the top 10?
Oh my gosh, too many.
Okay, so if you need one, you find a way to take them because you can't wait. Put it that way.
Yep.
I'm not a huge fan of Sanders. I know he's real talented. There's just something missing there.
Mm-hmm.
But the receiver, I mean, he's a superb athlete. And he could come in and start at corner or come in and start at wide receiver. And maybe he's a guy that you can start at corner and use as a periodic wide receiver. You know, it's really going to depend on the team that's taking him. What do they see him better as, a wide receiver or as a corner? Because he's pretty damn good at both. And, you know, this guy plays 100 plays every game. You know, he's incredible, but
how is that possible? That's amazing.
And he's been doing it for 3 years now. You know, 1 year at Jackson State and 2 years at Colorado. You know, he's got to be, and he's skinny. So I mean, you know, how he even playing that much, how he even holds weight is beyond.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
You know, does he go 1 overall? Well, how often does a receiver go 1 overall?
Rare.
You know, and so how you see guys now, okay, look at it this way. At this time last year, middle of November, did the average fan see Bo Nix going first round?
Mm-hmm.
No. Did the average fan see Penix going in the first round? No.
Nope.
Guess, you know, they all went in the first, you know what, top 10, top 12.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it you can go back a couple years ago and the kid from North Dakota State that went 3rd overall. See him going in the first round? Nope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You make an excuse or you find a way to make yourself fall in love with a quarterback. And so, and that, depending on where the Bears pick, you want people to take the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is push up the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So somebody else falls down to you.
Absolutely. Jay Sanders says that Hunter will be a Jaguar, and that's a pretty good bet, you know, given that they're committed to Trevor and they need to get him some weapons.
Yeah, but they're going to have a new coach and they're going to have a new GM. So,
yeah, so who knows what's going to happen over there? Absolutely. You might focus on the offensive line and get him some more protection. I got a question for you. You know, it seems like poor Matt Eberflus is on that, you know, dead man walking trail.
Yep.
If the Bears beat the Lions, if the Bears upset the Lions, which is highly unlikely, I wouldn't bet any money on it. But if they do, would you still consider making a head coaching change given the library of work Eberflus has given you this year, 2024?
if you're asking me,
Yes.
I don't care what happens in the game on Thursday.
He's gone.
Yes.
Ooh,
I want to find out my whole. I don't listen to the pregame shows. I listen a little bit to Patrick and Olin with Mully, but I don't listen to ESPN at all. But you know, Poles does an interview, and he was very complimentary. You know, I saw people write about it, Courtney Cronin and some others, about of Thomas Brown.
Mm-hmm.
In his interview, that his weekly interview that he does with ESPN for their pregame show.
Right.
So I think, my whole thought process is you want to put him in that situation to see if he is potentially a legitimate candidate. You're not promising him anything. And again, I said at the beginning of the show, what do you have to lose at this point?
Yeah.
I think you got everything to gain and nothing to lose.
Totally agree with you, Greg.
And it could be, you know what? It's too much for him. But you found out.
Right. Exactly. We know that the offense is responding to his leadership. So let's have him lead the entire team to see really if he has head coaching material or that leap to head coach he's not ready for. Absolutely.
Well, he's interviewed already.
Yes.
To be a head coach.
Right.
He's been an assistant head coach. And, again, I'm going on what people have told me because I don't know the guy. but what Patrick said last week, and he has a connection with McVay, is that McVay leaned on him. That's how strongly McVay felt about him. Mm-hmm. And so that says a lot. And what one of their front office people said to me, just said he dominates the room when he's in it. Mm-hmm. And you don't fuck with him.
Greg, when you were at Hallis Hall, did you get any sense as to why the ownership team has this philosophy about not making changes at the head coach position in season? Did you hear anything, or anyone, tell you something, or you get a sense?
I'm going to give you my honest answer. I put it on X yesterday. I think it's an old wives' tale.
Yep, I agree.
It's because it hasn't happened. They say it's never going to. Now, that may have been Ted's philosophy, and I'll go back to this. You got to have somebody on the staff who can step up and be an interim head coach and lead your team. Because if you don't have that, then you're pissing in the wind. Okay, so go back to, I can't speak to who was on the different staffs before we got here. And Lovey was doing a real good job, so why would you even have thought about it with Lovey? You go back and you look at Trestman's staff. Who was on the staff that you would hire? Who was on Fox's staff that you would hire? That Fangio maybe. That's and then you go to Pace's. Who was on Pace's staff that you would hire to be an interim head coach? And I think if you don't have a bunch, and like I said, I thought there were three. Now I think there's just two that could do a job to at least steady the ship.
Yeah. Interesting. D. Starren asked a question that I'd like to comment on. Is Thomas Brown really making the offense better? You have to look at the defense that the Bears played yesterday. This was a challenging defense for the offensive line and for the quarterback. Very, very challenging. And what Brown did with the offensive line and the quarterback yesterday, I thought was very impressive. Your thoughts, Greg?
No, I agree. I mean, because that coordinator's got away eating up rookie quarterbacks, and the rookie quarterback ate his ass up.
Well put. He's making Caleb better, says Jake. Indeed. There you go. All right, let me see what else I got stored here for you.
Part of that too, although in fairness, part of that now, Caleb's not a rookie anymore.
Yeah.
Played 11 games in the National Football League.
Great point.
Okay, he's seen a lot. Has he seen everything? No. But it's not like game one and game two, and even going into game three where they were crowding the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. Put it this way. Go back to game one against Tennessee or game two against Houston and have him play against the defenses the way they were playing then. Bears won the first game. They'd win the second game.
Yeah. If
they were doing the same thing. Not a doubt in my mind.
I agree.
Even with flukes.
I got to have you address this situation. If anyone has followed me on X over the years, they know that from time to time I like to go on a diatribe about NFL officiating. And the one thing that really rubs me wrong is that games are not officiated equally because there's a difference in amount of cameras from stadium to stadium. Well, yesterday we learned, and Flex Diggs asked a question here, we learned that you can't use that flagpole sideline camera angle during instant replays because not every team in the league, this was Mike Pereira saying this on the Fox broadcast, not every team in the league has a camera mounted down the sideline on a flagpole. And so therefore the officials cannot use it on most instances. You can use it on a touchdown. It's so complicated, Greg.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Please
if the
tell
camera's
me.
there, if you got something there to make the call right, then you use that camera to make the call right. And you had two instances. You had the catch by or non-catch by the Bears, and then by Keenan Allen, and then you had did Addison step out of bounds along the sideline. Now, if you watch the replay, that was along the Bears sideline, and somebody on the Bears pointed who was right there.
Right.
And now, could he have been off? Yeah, that guy could have been wrong. But I was looking to see a replay. Show me a sideline replay along that, and they showed nothing. And I disagree with Pereira on that because it's got to be the same for every game, and I don't agree with that. It's got to be use what you have available to make the call right.
Absolutely. And I feel like the NFL sometimes intentionally wants to create chaos with the officiating. They don't seem to care as much as, this is a multi-billion-dollar operation. There's billions more used to wager on these teams. I don't know if they care about how important it is to properly officiate games. And Greg, would you be upset if more calls were from the eye in the sky, an official in the sky, seeing plays and saying, okay, that official missed that call. That was not a holding. They press a button, stop play, and then they announce, 10-yard penalty for holding or whatever it is. Would you like
that would add about a half hour to the game?
Possibly, yes.
Okay, so I would not be for that. There was a couple holds that Minnesota had yesterday that I thought were blatant that didn't get called. And yeah, there were some calls that didn't go against, the Bears that could have gone against the Bears.
Right.
To be fair. But, like interference.
Mm-hmm.
That should be a challengeable call.
Agree.
Especially, that's in the end zone. That gives the Bears the ball on the 1 yard line if they make that call. Yeah. And to me, that was the turning point of the game, was that play.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. All right, let's see what we got here to wrap things up. D. Starren has an interesting question. Do the bad teams get the worst officiating crews?
A lot of the stuff is done weeks in advance.
Okay. Yeah. Just for travel schedules. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the luck of the draw.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get into the playoffs, you get all-star, I think the early playoff games, you got regular crews, but then when you get into the championship game and the Super Bowl and stuff like that, you got all-star crews.
Yeah. People have never worked together. Smart.
Yep.
Greg Busted Knee says, and this deserves some discussion, what do you make of the onside kick? That's got to be the play of the season for the entire team this season. It's not probably the play of the season, but that was beautifully executed by Cairo Santos.
Santos missed the kick.
Really?
The ball's supposed to go 10 yards.
That's true.
The Bears lucked out on that. The ball only went 7.5 yards.
Yeah.
Maybe 8. And so really that's it, but it rubs up against the back of the leg of one of the Minnesota players. And so then, regardless if the ball didn't go far enough, it becomes a live ball that you can recover. Mm-hmm. Had that ball, if they just left it alone, there would have been a 5-yard penalty and they would have had a kick again.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I thought maybe he was purposely trying to have it deflect off of a Viking player, but that would have been too tricky.
I just thought he hit it a lot higher, and I may be totally wrong, but he hit it right at the top of the ball, and there was no juice on the ball. That sucker stopped at about 7 to 8 yards, and it was really luck on the Bears' part that it hit the leg of a Minnesota guy. who was trying to block. You know,
That's right.
he wasn't aware where the ball was.
Little luck is always
That's why.
needed.
That's what the whole discussion was, and that's what Minnesota. What didn't go 10 yards?
But it hit one of your guys.
But yeah, but now, if your guys didn't do anything, that's right, it would have been a penalty.
Yeah. But Elisa was asking you for an evaluation if you had the choice of Mason Graham or Deion Walker for a guy who can play that 1 or 5 tech. Which of those two would you take and why?
I like Mason Graham. I haven't done enough on Deion Walker to answer that.
Okay.
I mean, those are going to be questions I'd answer in the spring because I got like a ton of work. Like I got 2 minutes before we went on, I got a call from one of the guys I work for, and he got some guys that he wants me to do, and like right away because they're in decision making mode.
Mm-hmm.
So I get up at 5 and I start doing this stuff at like 5:30, watching tape because I want to get it. You get me in the middle of the afternoon and I'm dead, so I got to get it done in the morning.
Yeah. When I'm going to bed.
By the way,
more.
have you seen some of the TV shows lately on side? Did you watch Paramount Plus?
No. I only watch Paramount Plus if it's on Showtime. I have Showtime, but I haven't paid for Paramount Plus.
Is Showtime picking up Landman?
I don't know, to be honest with you, but
it was new last week.
Johnny Santucci told me I should watch it. He loves it.
Billy Bob Thornton is so freaking good.
He's always good in whatever he does. He's
the
good.
way he does the line, probably get if this was real radio or something, we'd get censored for this. But there's a line. He's with his daughter, and she goes, "Are you having sex?" And she's like 17, 18 years old. And she gives us the excuse like you think she's going to say no. And she goes, "Dad, of course." And she goes, "Well, we got rules." And then Billy goes, it's funny. He goes, "Oh, I'd love to hear this. Okay, what are the rules?" He goes, "He can't come inside me, but he can come anywhere on me." And the look on Billy Bob's face and the way he delivers the lines, it's just hilarious.
That is awesome. We're going to put that on the list. Landman, Don and I will start watching that real soon. As Ricky says, Billy Bob is...
I love Billy Bob Thornton. Always have.
He has always delivered. Always delivered.
He's with this woman that she's investigating this thing, and it's about the oil industry, the West Texas oil industry. Mm-hmm. And so like she walks out into the prairie and there's like a rattlesnake 3 feet from her and she freezes and she goes, "Well, what should I do? Turn around and run?" And Bob looks at her and goes, "That might be the first thing I do."
He can deliver those lines perfectly.
What the fuck are you supposed to do?
Exactly. All right, Greg, I'm going to leave everyone with this last question for you. Of course, the Bears have a chance of winning Thursday in Detroit on Thanksgiving. They do have a chance to upset. But what level on a 1 to 10 scale, I know it's nowhere near 10 that the Bears are going to upset the Lions. And I know it's not 1 that the Bears are going to upset the Lions. But where do you put it with 1 being not likely or 1 being impossible and 10 being definitely going to upset the Lions? Where do you put that?
2.
Really, that bad?
I just think a short week, and traditionally those games are pretty tight. Mm-hmm. And in fairness, the Bears played Detroit pretty damn good last year, mm-hmm. but it's a different Detroit team this year. Anything can happen, but that team's on a roll. They're like, it seemed like they're on the team of the NFC to get to Super. And they're one of the few teams that have never been to the Super Bowl.
That's right. So this could be the year their virginity is busted. Their Super Bowl virginity.
Yeah. So And there's not that many teams that have never been, and they're one of them.
Yeah. I've been preconditioned to believe that the Lions are never going to make it to the Super Bowl, so it's going to be interesting to see how they screw this up.
No, yeah, I mean, would I love to see it? Yeah, now this is going to go against all my thought process that I've lived with and learned through all my years of football, but I think they lose by winning right now.
Wow, I never thought I'd hear you say that, Greg. Never.
And that, I want them to make a change. I really do, and it goes against everything about me, but I just, there's some quality football players on this team.
Mm-hmm.
They deserve better.
Yes.
The team is better than what the record is.
Yeah.
This team could very easily be 7-4 right now.
Yeah. That is the shame of all this. I mean, I feel terrible for us fans. Of course, we devote so much time and money and attention to this team, but I also feel for the players. They're not getting the benefit of great coaching, which they deserve. And I asked you this question 3 weeks ago. I asked you, where does Eberflus rank in terms of NFC North coaches? And you rightly said he's last. And it's not ever going to change. If he's never going to be better than LaFleur, he's never going to be better than O'Connell, and he's never going to be better than Campbell, who is probably going to win Coach of the Year.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny, Joe, before we go, there's some people out there that think Shanahan's in trouble in San Francisco. So have you seen some of that?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think in all seriousness, he has one below par season and they're going to get rid of him? It ain't going to happen.
That's right. Ain't going to happen. They've had injuries. They've had on the offensive and defensive side. There is one complaint that I would love for you to comment on, because you may know this guy. The defensive coordinator from the 49ers last year was Steve Wilks, is it? He used to be the defensive back coach.
He was a defensive back. He was Lovey's second defensive back coach. Perry Fuel, who now is in the league office, was Lovey's first. Right. Then there was Wilks, and then there was John Hoke.
So my question for you is, if a new coach comes in here and he wants to consider Steve Wilks as the defensive coordinator, which is what he was with the 49ers last year when they had an excellent year on defense, and he was let go because Shanahan said there were some incompatibility issues with Wilks and some of the players. Would you consider Steve Wilks? Do you know enough about him to say yes?
Yeah, I like Steve a lot, and I'll put it this way: he's a guy you want to talk to. Excellent. Okay, and then you make a decision from there.
Mm-hmm.
Steve he's a smart guy. He's a good guy. He's been a very successful coach. He got totally fucked over in Arizona when his 1 year as a head coach. None of it, which was his fault. That was all on ownership. You get a GM who's an alcoholic. He gets hit with a DUI. He's suspended, and yet he's still running the team from his living room. And they're using burner telephones to have him communicate. And
what a joke.
Finally, McDonough, who was the interim director of player personnel, and Steve Wilks are getting caught in the middle of it. Well, McDonough, and he's the son of, remember the great Will McDonough, the writer?
Oh, yeah.
He's his son.
Boston Globe.
He goes to court. He wins millions in court. Not that long ago. So that whole thing, Steve got caught up in that through no fault of his own. Mm-hmm. Probably never get another head coaching shot in his life. But, there's sometimes you just don't take there's jobs you just don't take.
Yeah.
That's one of them. The Jets are another one. Now, how about this? Came out, they've hired the 33rd team to be their consultant. Okay,
So,
now there's some really good people that work
yeah,
that are amongst the 33rd team,
right.
but it's run by Joe Banner, who's really a good guy, and Tannenbaum.
Yes.
They form the thing. Tannenbaum's a fucking idiot. Okay, Joe Banner, I put Joe Banner up here. Tannenbaum single-handedly destroyed 2 franchises, New York Jets and then Miami. And then you hear him on ESPN when he comes up and he makes suggestions they should do teams, and you just look to go, what the hell are you watching?
Yeah.
And they're going to let him make a decision on who's going to be the GM for the New York Jets. That's why the Jets are the Jets.
That is true. I couldn't believe that when I read that today, the 33rd team. I mean, they might have some good reasoning behind it.
Spielman's going to be involved, and Spielman is really a good
Spielman
guy.
is good. Spielman and Banner are really good.
But Tannenbaum?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. The optics on it are just not good for the organization, particularly after the tough year that they've had, firing their head coach and the whole Aaron Rodgers saga. It's a mess up in New York. We should be grateful that the Bears have the problems that they have compared to what New York has with their 2 football teams. So go ahead, Greg, final thought.
Joe Douglas, you look at Joe Douglas, who's the GM, and he's I've known Joe for a long time. He's a good guy. Worked here.
Mm-hmm.
He was Ryan Pace's first director of player personnel. Director of college scouting, I think. Then he went to Philly as director of player personnel. Grew up in Baltimore under Ozzie Newsome. He's been well trained. Joe gets fired last week, but a lot of the decisions that were made weren't even his decisions. They were made by the freaking owner that overruled him.
That's funny.
And it's like, why would you want to go there?
Well, there's only 32 of those jobs, as the
No, I know. And you know what? You're going to get a contract. A new GM who's never been a GM is going to get a contract for $3.5-4 million a year, get a 5-year deal. You say, I can put up with anything for that kind of money.
Yeah, absolutely. You could, risk a little bit of unhappiness for that kind of money, for sure. Greg,
you're getting paid anyway.
Absolutely. Greg, you've agreed to join the Bears Country production Saturday, December 7th. Cannot wait. I cannot wait either. Mr. Shorty, that should be a great interview.
I said I assume I'm going to be free that day. So, yeah.
Get all that Christmas shopping done. You don't go Christmas shopping. You don't strike me as a guy that goes Christmas shopping.
Oh, I do. I'm usually a late guy,
Same here. Christmas Eve. I started and finished it. All right, everybody. I'll be back here at 3:00 to talk football with Mike North, and I'm going to set something up with Greg and Mike. That should be a blast. And then we've got fresh programming throughout the rest of the week we'll even have a show Thursday morning, Thanksgiving Thursday, as a preview of the Bears game. So stick with us. Just subscribe and you'll get all the alerts. Greg, you're the absolute best. I'll talk to you later, brother.
Okay, buddy. See you later.
All right. Goodbye.